Hello and welcome to this session on how to make a true crime podcast series. I'm Susan, co-founder and host of GCTV Live, and absolutely delighted to be taking part in delivering these incredible guests to you throughout this month. So in this webinar, we are joined by Dan at Best Service, who will show us how to write background music for podcasts. Best Service, founded in 1986 as a pioneer in the upcoming sampling market, is a Munich-based company committed to providing the best virtual instruments and sound library experience possible, covering an exceptional range of inspiring tools for musicians. Now, every plugin and software instrument used in this webinar is available at bestservice.com. And of course, true crime is the perfect genre for using the right music to enhance your audio stories. So the tips and tricks you will learn here will allow you to have fun and use your creativity to create something unique. Of course, remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box during this webinar, and we'll also have a few minutes at the end. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Dan from Best Service, and I welcome you to my webinar on music production for podcasts. We will look at how background music works best in podcasts and what important rules you should follow to get the job done efficiently. And of course, I will also show you some exciting virtual instruments and tools from Best Service that can take your podcast to the next level. For this, we will dedicate ourselves to one of the most widespread podcast genre that just screams for music: the true crime podcast. So before we start, I want to point out that this webinar is aimed at people who already have experience with music production, but as well as podcast creators who are considering giving their podcast their own unique sound. Now, I will look to show you a lot of things, but please note that a minimum understanding of digital music production is quite helpful. All right, so welcome to the DAW. We're here in Logic Pro, and I've prepared an example for you that we're going to use to look at how background music like this is built and what to look for. So in my example, we look at probably the most important part of any podcast, the intro or opener. I think we agree that a podcast is mainly about the content, but every podcast should at least have a musical intro. And it's so important to create the right atmosphere and setting, because it will probably be heard in every episode. So it shouldn't be boring. It shouldn't get on your nerves, and it should definitely be recognizable. So we'll take a look first, and then we will talk about all the ingredients, okay? So here we go.
You are listening to Crimes of the 19th Century, a true crime podcast series that unveils the dark secrets of our history. In this episode, we speak about Jack the Ripper, an unidentified serial killer active in the impoverished districts in and around Whitechapel in the East End of London in 1888.
Okay, so this was my short intro for a true crime podcast. By the way, thanks to Teresa for the voiceover. I needed something authentic to show the music with voice. And that brings us to the first important rule. It's essential to know before you start if the opener will contain a voiceover. It doesn't make sense to create a bombastic intro if afterwards the speaker is not understandable, or if the music has to be made so quiet that it completely loses power. So just keep in mind that always make sure if there is a speaker waiting in the bushes. It's better anyway to work directly with a voiceover. First off, it helps to find the right speed for the project. So what you can do before you start composing is to put the recording on a click and see if it fits the speed. Well, it doesn't have to fit perfectly, of course. We are not producing a rap song after all, but it leads to a better overall fit between the music and the speaker. And sometimes the tonality of the speaker can already set the key of the composition, which is great too. So in our example, we hear that everything is pretty clean, and there are not too heavy moments. And when they're always between words. Also, a good trick is to create some space between sentences. Now, if it's your podcast, of course, you can do what you want. But if you're just a composer, you should check before you make changes. But I think that the one who makes the music should be allowed to change the rhythm of the speaker and to get the most out of it. So here, for example, I've created some space so that some of the percussion hits can remain prominent without getting in the way of the voice.
You are listening to Crimes of the 19th Century, a true crime podcast series that unveils the dark secrets of our history. In this episode, we speak about Jack the Ripper.
Okay, so let's go through the tracks and take a closer look. We start with the piano, which is this one. In this case, from the library Nada by Eduardo Tarilonte. Now, Nada is a fantastic library dedicated to new age music, containing a variety of beautiful instruments to create atmospheric and positive music. Let's see. So you have like the pianos, of course, strings, all sorts of harps and a violin. Then you have, of course, winds, a lot of winds, because Eduardo Tarilonte is a big fan of woodwinds. Some percussion, and of course some pads. So these are pretty awesome. And also a lot of things here. The meditation pads are awesome too. So let's try this one out. So again, it's a library for meditation music and for very positive music. So what did I use it for? That's right. Just for a nasty deep note that basically forms the foundation of the track. I'm sorry, Tari. Yeah, but that's the beauty of virtual instruments. No one limits you. You can create everything you want with it, despite the setting of the library. Now, the second one is also a piano from Nada. This time I edited the sound to create this characteristic sound of an out-of-tune piano. Basically, what I did is I loaded two different pianos in the same sampler, and detuned one of them a bit, and then did some panning, and voila. Sherlock feels at home. And that's also the musical element that puts us in the right time. The episode is about murders in the 19th century. And we all know, thanks to Hans Zimmer, that all pianos were out of tune at that time. Let's listen to what I did. So again, very simple, just some highlights. Let's move on to the next instrument, which are the violins, sulpont sustains. Now, this instrument I'm using here is part of one of my favorite tools from Best Service, which is called the orchestra. This patch, for example, offers different and very unusual violin articulations, which I like to use pretty often because it feels very different from the typical sound of the violin, and because it's a very big section, you get this wide singing sound. So as you can see, I'm changing dynamics with the mod wheel. Let's listen to some of the other articulations just to see. So we have a harmonic tremolo here. It sounds awesome too. Then of course the harmonic marcatos. And the Bartok pizzicato. So again, pretty cool articulations. And that fit very well in this scary setting. I wanted to create a basic atmosphere and set the chord progressions for the intro. Although there are not too many chord changes, I'm keeping it simple here, which is probably the next rule. Let's check out the track first. Let's play it from the beginning. So as you can hear, I play a maximum of 2 notes at the time here. And the reason for that is quite simple. The samples already contain the sound of a complete section. And so with each additional note, it basically doubles the size of the section, which can lead to a very unnatural sound. And besides that, we want to leave room for the next instruments. So let's move on to the solo cello, which plays a tremolo that supports the string sustains and also adds a few highlights that contribute to the eerie atmosphere. So let's listen to the cello together with the sustains. So just like with the violins, the mod wheel controls the dynamics, which is a quite common feature in the world of virtual instruments. So here I used the emotional cello, a very expressive library with countless articulations and features. So let's play some articulations from here. So right now we are on the spiccatos. So let's try some of the longer articulations. So the beauty of this library is that it contains no fake vibrato, but many articulations with different vibrato styles and lengths, which can lead to a very realistic result. So one feature I used here is the so-called ornament key switches, which you can find here on the right side. Now, with these, you can automatically switch to different articulations by pressing an ornament key. So, for instance, here, I switch from the tremolo to a soft ending. So let's listen to that. Just the cello. So it's just the ending, and as you can see, the modulation wheel is still on 127, but you hear the ending, which is basically a new articulation. So you can switch while being on the same key. And and here I switched again from the tremolo to a trill. at the end we have a short articulation. So this feature is quite unique because you often can't get smooth transitions with regular key switches, and if you are on the same note. But in this case, you can with the ornaments. So let's go to the next track. Now here we are back to the orchestra. And this time we will talk about the highlight of this library and why I think that it's awesome for podcast audio design. The orchestra offers a complete orchestra in one library, obviously. But besides the variety of the instruments, the main feature is the so-called ensemble engine, which we can see here. With this, you can control a complete ensemble just by playing chords on a keyboard. Up to 5 different instruments can be loaded into the engine, and they can receive notes from arpeggiators and envelopes. Let's see how this works in our track. So as you can hear, all 5 instruments play simultaneously, but different parts. Now let's take a look what's happening in the background. So when we open the engine tab, we see that we have a total of 3 arpeggiators and 2 envelopes. And these can be assigned to 1 or more instrument slots, which can be found here. The ARPs can create rhythmic parts, while the envelopes can control the dynamics of sustained sounds over the set period of time. So you can create a crescendo or a decrescendo, for example. So you can see, like, if we move the mod wheel, we see a crescendo and then a decrescendo here, and you can edit it, of course. And all this happens while I'm simply holding chords on the keys, which is totally awesome. So let's try this out. The most important feature is the note selection, which can be found here. With this, you can basically tell the engine which notes from the played chord it should use at all. This basically breaks up the played chord into different parts, and that's also why the instruments play different melodies or different rhythms. So, for example, arpeggiator 3 uses only the lowest 2 notes of the chord. So arpeggiator 3 is routed to the clarinet. Let's solo this one. And we're playing some notes. So if I play a chord with 4 notes, like this, Then the clarinet only uses the A and the C. So if I change the other two, nothing happens, because it's using only the lower two. And here you can see the octave shift, which allows you to transpose the notes coming from the engine. In this case, an octave higher because it's a clarinet. So to match the playing range of the instrument. So this way you can basically create small arrangements within one instrument, and you can play a whole ensemble in a way that would be impossible with single instruments or single tracks. Let's also take a quick look at the next two tracks, which are also played with the orchestra. In this case, it's a string ensemble playing 16 staccato notes, and the second one is a mixture of brass and percussion featuring the massive evil hits that can be found in this library and in an extension from the orchestra universe, which is called Horns of Hell. Let's take a listen to the strings first. So they're only at the end of the track. And with the brass hits together. So I use this as a build-up to create a dramatic ending. Actually, let's listen to all three. And these are all the orchestral instruments of the composition. So as you can see, the ensemble engine helps a lot when it comes to efficiency. Not only does it save time, it also keeps the session to an acceptable size. So if you had played this with individual instruments, I would have needed at least 10 to 15 tracks. More tracks always means more time spent arranging, making changes or mixing. And let's not forget that this is a podcast, not a Hollywood movie. So besides a good sounding composition, it's also about time management. You won't have weeks or months to compose, and the budget should be taken into account as well. Okay, what else do we have? Let's move to the percussion. So here I used Timpano Romano from the library Dark Era, a kind of very old frame drum to set some harder accents. And here again, the same game, no exaggerated rhythms. We want to let the music breathe and make room for the voice. We don't need like hysteric blockbuster mayhem. No, we don't want that. So let's check out the track. Just basic hits. By the way, Dark Era is a very suitable for rather dark and gritty soundtracks. The library deals with ancient instruments that were used by the Vikings and other old cultures and tribes. I really love this old punchy percussive instruments. Some of them made out of animal skin, for instance. Definitely not a vegan library. as well as some of the awesome tribe-like vocal performances. So I can show you some of them. They're really, really cool. Let's check out the percussion first. So this one, for instance. So very, very punchy. Let's try another one. Maybe the square frame drum. And as you can see, you have like MIDI files on the green keys where you can play pre-made like rolls, motifs, which is pretty cool too. Now let's check out the voices, which are pretty cool. The Inuit vocal rhythms, which I really love. Damn! I didn't know that the Inuit had COVID too. And what else? Of course, we have a lot of wind instruments, which are pretty cool here. Let's try this one out. And of course, a lot of rhythmic pads and soundscapes. So let's listen to a soundscape. All right. Didn't see that coming. That's the soundscape. Soundscapes are pretty awesome for background atmospheres. The soundscapes have different parts, so you can mix and match the different parts. Like here, you can change the volume of each part. You can change the panning and create your own mix. Another cool thing of the library are the epic loops. Now, they're probably the complete opposite of what we need in this track, but anyway, they're epic AF. Again, even the loops are cut into different parts, so you can mix them the way you want. You basically don't find that in any other library. If you have loops, they're probably already mixed, and you cannot change them. But in this case, you can completely change the mix of the loops, which is pretty cool. I have two different Tympanum Romano here. This one is a little bit darker, and this one is a little bit, has a little bit a harder attack, and they just sound awesome together. Okay, so like I said, let's move on to the next track in the rhythm section. In this case, I used Dark Horizon to create this rhythmic pulse. Let's listen to that first. Sounds like this. Now, Dark Horizon is mainly synthesis-based bass instrument that allows you to create really deep and heavy bass lines, pulses, and rhythms. And as you can see here, the library also uses the same ensemble engine as the orchestra. So you can split the different parts here. In this case, however, the ensemble engine has some additional features that are useful for synths. For example, the steps can be edited more individually, and the different parts also have useful effects like filters and distortion and amplifiers, which can also be modulated again by the engine or the mod wheel. Let's try this one out. As you can see, the mod wheel modulates the cutoff of the filter here, as well as the velocity of the notes, which is pretty cool. So in this track, I used one of the countless presets and changed it a bit. So if we go here, basically see the gigantic preset browser where you can just search for a specific character of the sound or the meter or the rhythmic feel, and there are a lot of categories here. The same goes with the orchestra, of course. You have a really big, I think 400 presets that you can choose from. In the next track, where I also used Dark Horizon, I created my own little patch because I wanted to have a hi-hat-like sound to support the rhythm. So it sounds like this. So basically what I did is I loaded a noisy sound in the first slot. I changed the release. I made it pretty short. And also the mod wheel modulates the length of the release. So basically if I go up, it's a little bit longer, and if I go down, it's pretty unhearable. And the second track is just a very distorted sound, which again helps with the atmosphere. Now let's listen to the whole rhythmic section. Let's see. So we have a bass here. So let's solo the bass. So in context, we can now hear that it works well together. It achieves the tension it needs without overlapping too much or having distracting elements. And this is quite important when we work with voice, especially high frequencies in the voice range can be very problematic, which is why a rhythm section should always be nicely balanced. Okay, now we come to the next track. There are seashell calls, also found in Dark Era. A pretty cool instrument that sounds a bit like a signal horn and features cool bendings. So there we can hear the bendings. And here I've used this to support the tension of the cello. So we can take a quick listen to that. So let's solo the seashell call and the cello. So again, I can't repeat it enough. You need to create a balanced sound. That's always important when making music, of course, but in conjunction with a speaker, it's even more important. So the mix may sound big, of course, but the individual instruments don't have to. They just have to fit in well. Okay, so here we have another track that should actually belong to the rhythm section. And these are whispers, also found in Dark Era. So I use the whispering as a lead into the percussion hits, similar to how you would use a whoosh sound or a reversed cymbal. But in this case, this human component just fits better and also adds to the spooky atmosphere. Let's play the whispers together with the percussions. Let's see. Let's play it from the beginning. All right. And last but not least, we have a very strange element from the library Klanghaus. So Klanghaus is a library produced by the German instrument maker Ferdinand Försch, who sampled his collection of percussive and string instruments. Many of them sound really strange, but cool. And I would definitely recommend this library to anyone who is into horror or, dramatic audio design. In this case, I used an ambient sound that just fit perfectly into the setting of the intro. So let's listen to that solo. So a very cool and unusual sound. Let's play some more samples from the instrument. So really cool stuff in there. Okay, so what have we learned? There are basically 3 rules to follow when composing background music for podcasts or any other type of media. So first, always make sure if there will be a speaker. That's essential. It depends on how you approach the music. Second, less is more. Use the instruments wisely. Don't overload the track. The end result, including the voice, is important, not the individual instruments. And third, try to use special tools to reach your goal faster. So libraries like the orchestra or Dark Horizon with their ensemble engine may help to create new ideas in a short period of time, and to keep the session as compact as possible. Because this is important when, like in podcast, music for new episodes has to be composed in a very short time. So that's all I got for now. I hope you enjoyed my little webinar.
That is fantastic. And everybody, all these questions coming in are great. Dan has really been, answering them all for you here. So if you do have any more questions for Dan, I'm going to go through the ones that have already come in. But if you do have any more questions for Dan, he's in the chat box area now for another 5 or so minutes. So if you write your questions in there now, whilst I go through the ones that have already come in. So Ben from Vancouver has asked, I don't play the piano, but is there another way to use this software? And Dan has said, well, it's important to have a MIDI controller to record the notes. The piano is the common way to compose with music software, but there is also other MIDI controllers, example for guitar, and you can also draw the notes without a MIDI controller. So thank you for that, Dan and Ben, for your question. The second question we have is from Craig in Chicago, and he said, what's the name of the software you're using, please? And Dan has said the software is Logic Pro 10. It's Apple's own music software for the Mac and one of the most used. Thank you again so much for that. Then we have a question from Laura, and Laura has asked, you mentioned something called a virtual instrument, I think. What is that? So Dan has said a virtual instrument is basically a software that can be loaded into a DAW or DAW, digital audio workstation, like the program that he was using throughout that session. And this software is able to emulate one or more instruments, from acoustic instruments to synthesizers, so you can use it to compose music on the computer. Thank you, Laura, for that question, and thank you, Dan, for answering. The next question was from Ronan in Kilkenny, and he is asked, I play basic keyboards, but I'm wondering how good I need to be able to play these instruments. Yes, it's a very good question, Ronan, thank you for that. And I'm going to see if Dan has answered. Yeah, he has indeed. He said there are many tools you can use that makes it easier for you to compose. Virtual instruments like the orchestra that he was showing us there in that session allows you to play complicated music motifs by simply playing chords on the keyboard. So as long as you learn the basics, you can already do a lot with the right tools. And Dan, just for you, we have been getting in lots of compliments and people asking if you score music for film and TV. And also Mary and Owen in Dubai had said that it's late night here. We're watching in the dark and you're scaring us with these effects. So thank you for that, Dan. Zach has asked, he's in East London and he wants to know what the wheels on the keyboard do. Another great question. Dan has said the wheel that he's using a lot is called the mod wheel, M-O-D wheel. It basically sends a MIDI signal to the computer, and many virtual instruments use this to change the tone or dynamics, for instance. Thank you, Dan, for that. Right. The next question was from Mohammed, and he asked, he wants to know what articulation is. And let me see if Dan has answered this here. I'm sure he has down further. question 6, question 7, oh my goodness, hold on, I'll come back to this one in a minute because there's a lot of questions that have come in the meantime. Right, we have Paul has asked, can you give us a list of all the software you're using this evening? Dan has given a list of this, so we will put this in the comments section and also send it out, Paul. So just let us know if you don't get that or if there's anything else that you wanted there. Dan has provided all the links. So let's see now the next questions from Dan. So Kira has said, I really like the idea of creating my own music for my podcasts. I can play the keyboard grade 5, which is about, I think it's level 2 in the UK system. Could you give me an idea of what software I might need and how much it might cost, please? Absolutely. Dan has answered this first. And he said, firstly, you'll need a DAW. That was the digital audio workstation that Dan mentioned before, like the one that he's using. There are a lot, of course, but there's no bad one. Maybe a good option for a beginner would be the PreSonus Studio one. And then he's actually linked to that here. So we'll put this in the comments as well. Basically, the PreSonus one is one that is a DAW that already gives you all you need for creating music. And from there, you can get other virtual instruments that can be loaded into the DAW. Thank you so much for that, Dan, for answering those questions. Let's see. Oh my goodness, we do have more here. So I'll just try and go through a few more of these as quickly as I can. So question from Giles was, you mentioned, I think it's called an articulation engine. What is that, please? And Dan has said, you probably mean an ensemble engine. This is the feature of the orchestra and also Dark Horizon, which allows you to play several instruments at the same time by playing simple chords on the keyboard. Fantastic. Thank you. Donald has said bonjour from Paris. Bonjour, Donald. I wish I knew more about how to use this software. Are there any training videos on YouTube that I can follow? Unfortunately, not from Dan, but he does say there's a lot of people doing this. He would say just search for a beginner guide for digital music production and start from there. Thank you, Dan. That's great. And No Name has said, just to clarify, these are modules that work in Contact. And Dan has said, yes, some of them are. For instance, the orchestra and others like Dark Era are made for the free Best Service Engine sampler. Fantastic, thank you. And an answer to your question, Nita, about whether Dan writes music scores for films and TVs, he says, yes, of course. So thank you so much for all of these questions. And I think we just have time for one more here where Damien has asked, where can we find the libraries and engines to use the Logic Pro and how to get started as a beginner with only basic music theory knowledge? I'm just going to see if Dan has answered this here for you. Maybe Dan, if you're still there, you could let Damien know and we can send Damien on a message on this. So where can he find the libraries and engines to use Logic Pro and how to get started as a beginner with only basic music theory knowledge? Maybe Dan, if you have a chance to answer that there. Guys, just wanted to let you know this is the last of our free live sessions this month. So if you've been enjoying these and you want us to do more, let us know. And let us know if there's an area of podcasting that you feel you'd like more information on or you'd like us to cover. Send us an email, hello@gocreateacademy.com, and we will try our best to get those together for you. Right. So I think I'm not sure if Dan is still there, Damien. So if not, what we can do is we'll send you an email, Damien, with that. And just the last question I have here was from Lisa. She said, is Dark Era made especially for darker horror sounds? And Dan says, not only, it features many very old and rare instruments, as well as sound designed instruments that surely will work very well in a horror setting. Yes, I absolutely believe that. True. And thank you, Julie. Yeah, I just saw your session there, Julie. That was actually, it's a feedback session for people who have submitted content, I can email you about that separately as well. So I think we have covered everything. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. And obviously a very, very special thank you to Dan for all that work and putting that together. Is absolutely fantastic. And his answer for you, Damien, is he would say you should choose a DAW first, because this is essential. For instance, the PreSonus Studio one that he mentioned. And from there, you can go through tutorials for this specific DAW, for instance, on YouTube. Thank you so much, Dan. Amazing. That was fantastic. All the work you put into that. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, of course, to Best Service for taking part in this. Thank you, of course, to Vigorate, our wonderful sponsors, for making all of these sessions possible over the last month. And thank you to all of you for your wonderful questions and getting involved. And I think my last comment is just go out there and get podcasting. And we look forward to hearing all of your podcasts. Thank you. I'm Susan. Take care. We'll see you soon.